Good evening. I now call the 49th meeting of the Jacksonville Environment and Appearance Advisory Committee to order. Our meeting target time is 1 hour. I want to welcome everyone to the meeting. I'm Betty Schepelbein and I serve as chair for this committee. Could everyone please introduce themselves? Pat, you want to start?
I'm Pat Donovan Brandenburg, the Stormwater Manager with the City of Jacksonville.
I'm Stacey Giles, Administrative Assistant.
Asa Keys, member.
Willie Saunders, member.
I'm Sunshine Williams, Vice Chair and Tree Board Member.
I'm Linda Smith, member and tree board member.
Grace Halbert, member and past chair.
Dr. Angela Washington, Council Liaison.
Gina Webb, member and chair of Recognition Committee.
Thank you. Every committee member is asked to update their contact information and correct any information that the city has on file. Members should review the agenda and consider the adoption of the agenda before proceedings. Could I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion to adopt.
And agenda?
Just the agenda right
Just
now.
the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Because there was no quorum for the last meeting, the previous meeting minutes were not approved. The minutes of June 6th meeting and notes for the August 1st meeting session are provided for your consideration. Do I have a motion to adopt both sets of minutes?
To adopt, correct, or reject the minutes and notes.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion
Okay, thank
to
you.
adopt.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. The official attendance report is provided on page 9, which must be submitted to the clerk each month. If you find a mistake, please let the staff know as soon as possible. The city ordinance requires automatic removal for absences. It is now time for our presentation for this meeting. I'm going to turn the introduction over to the staff liaison, Glenn Hargett.
And I'm proud to once again present to you Pat Donovan Brandenburg. As many of you know, she's been with the program to help restore habitat in the New River since 1997, and she has been part of the successful restoration of that and has been part of seeing it get dirty again and then get cleaned again, and so here we are. But she came to join the city as stormwater manager, and she continues tonight in that role to bring you an update on those wonderful things that have to do with stormwater and water quality.
Thank you, Lynn. And thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to present what we've been working on. The map that you see before you is our Adopt a Stream program. We have 5 different groups cleaning different segments within the city of Jacksonville. Each area is covered by a different group. For instance, we have Rotary, we have the Boy Scouts, we have individuals. And you'll get numbers in just a minute. Some of the trash that was picked up from our stream cleanups, we had 12 of them this past year. That means 15 miles of stream bank were cleaned quarterly. There were 70 people that participated with 80 bags of trash and or recyclables. That actually gives us 180 miles of stream being cleaned per year. Also, as you know, my hero is Jim Wheeler. Jim works for us about 20 hours a week and has done so for the last 10 years. He is one of the most dedicated souls I've ever had the honor of working with. He is, in the month of September, he picked up 57 bags of litter, 551 year to date, and in the last 10 years, 8,885 bags. Now remember, these are not small kitchen bags. These are 55-gallon bags. You would think by now we would run out of trash. Unfortunately, we do not. Something else that we constantly battle with, and I will tell you was a little bit less this year, at least during the summertime, is we're battling still invasive species, one being alligator weed, because alligator weed will actually choke off and close our tributaries and/or parts of the river. This year, it was not as bad, and one of the reasons is we went into a drought in June. June, July, and August, we saw very, very little rainfall. After Dorian, it has not rained. So our salinities have increased in the river, and in doing so, alligator weed is not doing well. So the higher salinities has been very positive. But back in the spring, we did not anticipate a drought, and so we actually got flea beetles in from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers from the Florida Keys. They went out and captured them for me and sent them up. So everywhere that you see a purple marker is where we actually released flea beetles, which is a natural predator for alligator weed. But don't worry, they're not going to hurt you because they're about this big. They're tiny, tiny little things, and they're really cute. They're black and white, or black, white, and yellow with racing stripes. They're really, really cute for a beetle, but this is where we let them go. And one good thing is that because we can't keep them year-round because they can't tolerate our winters. They can't tolerate temperatures any lower than 50 degrees, and we definitely get temperatures lower than 50 degrees. However, I'm not so sure this past winter. Another duty for the Stormwater Water Quality Division is maintaining all of the BMPs in our area, or Stormwater Control Measures is now what they're called, SCMs. The city alone has 6.9 miles that we maintain. So this past year, there was 156 inspected with 124 hours of maintenance, and we also inspect 155 private stormwater control measures, meaning businesses. It was a busy year for us last year. There was a lot of grant money to be had, so we got some grant money to replace the dam that's crossing Thompson School Creek Bridge. It's something that Glenn and I have worked on for 15 years. This was the third time we actually applied for funding, and we got it through the state, the Clean Water Revolving State Loan at a 0% interest. So we're removing that dam, we're putting in a bridge, and we're going to restore water quality in Thompson School Creek and minimize flooding, hopefully, in people's backyards. We are doing the same thing, very similar, over on Leonard Street. We've got 2 new stormwater control measures going in Bryn Mawr, which is one of the older sections of Jacksonville that does not have any treatment, and 24, the intersection of 24 and Western floods a lot. So we're slowly going to chip away at that, trying to reduce the amount of water getting to that intersection. That was through Bill Hunton, and the city applied. It's federal money. We got the big grant for the pump out station for our brand new marina. And then we actually applied for some mini grants for stream bank erosion and or blockages from Hurricane Florence a year ago. We're getting ready to start those. And then of course the big one, we're up to 1.1 and some change million in grants and donations for the Oyster Highway project, of which the North Carolina Wildlife Habitat Foundation in Greensboro, the Clean Water Management Trust Fund, and the General Assembly were some of the biggest contributions. And it has been remarkable. We built, remember, I think I was here right after we built them, we built 6 half-acre reefs. On those 6 half acres, we put in 1,080 reefs. It took us 3 weeks, a very long day straight to build them. So now we are in the monitoring stage, and as you can see, the oysters have actually doubled in size since they went in April, and we have had recruitment and settlement, which was, the phrase, if we build it, they will come, is evident, because the castles, which is the concrete Lego thing you see on the left, were bare when we put them in the water, and this is 5 months, and you can see how big the oysters are when compared to the hand holding it up. So we're very positive. And something else, the oyster castles were actually built as fish aggregation devices to try and bring our fisheries back, because the New River is a primary nursery area. And so I would love to see it packed with fishing boats, and actually we're getting there. If you look at our boat landing any day, these are some of the fish that were caught on our reefs. The left-hand side are very large red drum, which is our state fish. And to the right is the pompano permit, which are in the jack family. We had 26 educational programs this year. This was National Night Out. We reached a lot of different participants through educational programs as well as National Night Out. We also help out with Earth Day. Illicit discharges are our number one priority, no matter what we're doing, unless we're way downriver on the Oyster Highway project. We drop what we're doing and we immediately respond. We need to catch the perpetrator in the act in order to educate them as to why this is illegal and against the law, to keep them from doing it again. Also to minimize impacts for an environmental cleanup. Every year this goes down. Last year our number was 54. This year it's 44. When we first started this program, we were in the hundreds plus. So education does help. And then of course, our visitors, Florence, then Dorian. You think you get used to these things, but not really. Again, some of the news that hit the area was sediment and other chemicals pouring out of our river watershed after each event, and most of that is basically sediment. There was a lot of sediment that came off of our shore. However, there was a lot of swamp water that came down from the Wrenchlands area that is very nitrogen rich and so therefore is black in color. So, yeah. So the Dorian was not as bad. In fact, I didn't see any printouts of the flow coming out of our watersheds from Dorian, but Mother Nature, was cleaning house. So this is her sweeping the watershed out into the Atlantic Ocean. And then to show exactly how great the New River is, we had our very first triathlon. Talk about punctuation of how healthy the New River is. The New River Splash was a great event. Some pictures. It was a media event before, during, and after. There were a lot of participants. For instance, there were 94 people in our triathlon for 142 total in the race. I'm going to stop here for just a second because in the pre-media thing, we took them out on the boat to explain why the New River is a black river. It is basically a black river because of all the trees that you find along our shoreline. Predominantly are pine trees and cypress trees. How do you make tea? Well, you pour hot water over tea leaves. What comes out is clear brown liquid. Well, that's what the New River is when it rains, this rainwater washes through the pine needles on the forest floor, stripping the tannins and putting it into the river. So the river, as you can see, the water is clear, but it's like tea. It's a brown, clear river. Also, you have to think about what type of watershed we're dealing with, because we always get asked, well, why isn't it crystal clear like in the Caribbean? Well, we're a river, and a very important component to the seeking system is treating organics. So leaves, twigs, branches that fall down, during the summer, during storms, during the fall, end up part of it in the river. And what happens is through the process of decomposition is it puts nutrients into this watershed. Nutrients that allow for algae to grow, positive, good algae to grow, so that invertebrates can feed on the algae, small fish can feed on the invertebrates, and on up the food chain. So this is, as sunlight comes in through the river, it does not bounce off a white sandy bottom. it's absorbed by the dark brown leaves, twigs, and branches that are on the bottom. So it looks darker. If, as you know, white, it will reflect the sun and the heat. So you wear white during the summertime. If you wear a dark black t-shirt on the boat, you're cooking because it absorbs the sunlight and the rays. And so that's what's happening with the river. And just one other point is we tested the river right before the triathlon for bacteria to see how well the water was. And I must tell you that drinking water standards, you're allowed 1 organism per 100 mLs of water. For recreational standards, you're allowed 200 organisms per 100 mLs of water. At the mouth of Wilson Bay going out into the river on the Wednesday before our triathlon, we had 12. The New River was as close to drinking water standards as we've been in a very long time, and I think we'll continue to do so. Kerr Street Marina, where we put our swimmers, was 11. Popkin Bridge, where we, may have swam up there and back, but they shortened the distance, was 17. Fisherman's Wharf was 28. Again, recreational waters, meaning if you swim, ski, fish, jet ski, boat, some water may get splashed on your face and in your mouth. We're fine. We're better than recreational standards. We are close to drinking water standards, even though the New River is not a water supply at this time. So back to the New River Splash, again, 142 total for the race. This basically was a 400-yard swim, a 13-mile bike, and a 5K run. We had about 300 participants at the event to the Splash and Dash. There were over 30 vendors, and next year we plan on it to occur on June 6th. So earlier in the summer, hopefully not so hot, than later in the season. But we actually gave boat tours to educate people about how clean the New River is and how wonderful it is to have this event. There's our wonderful Jim signing people up. We had a full boat each time we went. We even had people on standby in case someone didn't show up for their sign-in slot. Lots of kids were on the boat, so we taught them about the Wilson Bay Initiative, the New River as a whole. I think Kevin even flew the drone.
That's what took these shots.
Yep, scared me to death because you hear this nee, and it was the biggest bug I'd ever heard. Turn around and there's the drone. So the biggest message that we relayed by having the triathlon and the Splash and the Dash is our river is doing great. We're working hard, but that doesn't mean we let up. That doesn't mean we stop our efforts with our stormwater program, the management of development, and continuing to put in more stormwater control measures, as well as the Oyster Highway. We actually are getting ready to start on phase 2, where we'll build 6 more reefs in April of 2020. And I believe that's what I have. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Am I allowed to do that?
Yes.
The beetles will die in the winter. The next year, will you have to bring some more?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
And I prefer to use a natural predator because the only other alternative is spraying a herbicide. And even though I'm extremely careful when we're spraying, meaning I will not spray if we've got winds greater than 10 miles per hour. Will not do it. Which means we're sweltering when we do it, but also you've got to have 48 hours of no rain. Now this summer, that was perfect because it didn't rain, but all other summers it doesn't go like that because you spray with a surfactant, and if it rains the next day, then that washes off. And I have a hard time putting something into an environment that I'm trying to clean. So I would prefer natural predation.
You, Ms. Potts, Brandon Shard, you indicated that what the parameters was that now that we have a healthy river. So at its worst, what was the new river like before with the pathogens when it was at its worst?
My first year, we had 35,000 to 70,000 fecal coliforms per day. Per day. We wore gloves and masks and hazmat suits pretty much if we were in or on the water that first year. Best thing we ever did was shut down our wastewater treatment facility and go 100% land application where we're actually building a forest or growing a forest. Best decision the city ever made, ever. Well, me personally, I'm sure some others may disagree, sorry. I'm very biased.
I think that took 12 years to get that permit to do that. It was the first one in the state, the second largest after the one near Atlanta, Georgia, DeKalb County. It was a novel thing. Now they're rather prevalent around, but the city was really leading the pack on that. So.
Good job, kudos, excellent.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all that you guys do too, thank you.
Thank you.
I have one other question.
Yes, ma'am.
You were saying about what they was doing, illegal.
Illicit discharges.
Illicit discharges.
What they didn't tell, what were they doing?
People that don't realize storm drains on the side of the road or a catch basin, it does not go to our wastewater treatment facility. So therefore, it's not filtered. If you pour something down a storm drain, it goes directly into the New River, meaning paint, petroleum products in the form of oil, antifreeze gas, and believe it or not, we have found it all. People doing that deliberately and unintentionally. You name it, and we've caught them dumping it. Grease is another one, unfortunately. Waste products, food products, they view it as a dump. Leaves and twigs and branches. One of the things that we commonly target in the fall are landscape companies. I will say a lot of them have come around. Don't cut your grass where you spray the grass clippings out to the street or the gutter. First rain event, now all of those grass clippings fills that storm drain. Where's the water gonna go when it rains or we have a hurricane? Even though we have 2 drainage crews with our streets department working all the time, but we've got over 7,000 storm drains within city limits. How do you touch all of those every single day? Well, you just can't. You've got to try and get to all of them a couple times throughout the entire year, especially before a hurricane. So minimizing what goes down them would be more important than trying to clean them up after. But illicit discharges, especially petroleum products and waste products, those are big and expensive environmental cleanups. You got to get vac trucks in. It's expensive to clean up that, but it's what we do to keep our watershed clean.
What you all think about this, Jacksonville was one of the phase 2, level 2 communities. To get regulated, you have to have a permit from the federal government to discharge into the river. Well, that discharge is the stormwater. So we would have had to come up with some elaborate system, which would have been astronomical, to do that. So every so many years, we have to recertify and get the permit again. But she has to do an annual report showing what it is we're doing. Obviously, a real desire would say every time there's a storm drain, there's some sort of treatment that happens. Of course, this is what we know, that with new developments, you have the stormwater ponds that remove the sediments and do the things and all like that. But all of those storm drains that she mentions, there's a number smaller than that actually discharge directly to the river. I mean, each one does not have its own line that goes to the river. It may be on a line that goes to the river.
Correct.
But, that's a pretty pricey thing to do. But that's how you protect the river. And so consequently, when you see somebody pouring oil down the drain because they think that's a cheap way of doing it or something. And remember when we started this, we were surprised that some businesses that you and I know had a drain out in the front, in the middle of their garage, and that went directly to the river. I mean, and it was just that they had no thing that went to the wastewater. It was that drain went straight out there because that's the way it was always done. So a lot of this has really changed minds, and I don't think anybody in this room would disagree. You do not want that going in the river. Look at that stuff. I mean, y'all should be so proud of this community for what it did as a community to do this, you know. Well, she championed the effort and was the labor behind it, but this community put up $300,000. That was all the city money that was involved in that project. The rest of it was grant money and everything that came out of it. I'd say we have gotten that investment back. And when you see this New River Splash, the first competitive swim event that we can find in the history of the city of Jacksonville that took place in the river. Now, Mayor Teachy used to tell the story about some event that happened at the USO, but I believe that was more a fabrication or an exaggeration than it was of reality, knowing him. You know? But in all seriousness, I mean, this New River Splash on the 28th of September, that is one of those remarkable days in my mind.
That's like really putting Jacksonville on the map, if you really think about it.
We have a lot of people who want to know how Jacksonville did it.
Right.
We copied some other ideas, and as Dr. Jay Levine, the kind of father of this, the science leader of this, called it was jump-starting nature. Let nature do its work, but you just got to get out of its way and let it do it. And it's been impressive. I wish we could continue doing things like the rupia growing and things like that we did that was even more so. But, you know, it's not always as politically advantaged to do that type stuff, but it's had an effect in this community. Think about the number of houses that have been built on the edge of the river that used not to be there too.
That's true.
You know, I mean, amazing. Thank you, Pat.
Most welcome. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Your turn. Let's now turn the presentation of the meeting over to Glenn, the staff liaison, Glenn Market.
Oh, well, okay, we'll call it Gina, thank you. We want to just mention about that we got a nomination today for an address in Northwoods for that. You remember, you can go online and nominate anything, but if you committee members just want to call, if you want to call Stacia, she'll take it down and give it to Media Services and we'll get it taken care of. I want to give you, yesterday, Stacia was on the case with Rose up there and they got your stuff taken care of. So we need a picture. The reason we require one when the public nominates in there, because we got to see something, you know, what this type of stuff is. Toward the end of that, you know, the ones that you previously approved back in June, they were presented at the August 20th meeting. As you know, the council kind of takes July off, you know, after that. So we had to, you know, we didn't have another, it was too late for the meeting in June to do it. So obviously we had to do it in August. And then we're asking you to approve for your holiday decorations tour and to alert the public and those that might decorate that to be ready by 4:30 on December 17th, 2019. So Madam Chairman, unless we hear an objection, we'll plan for that date. Okay, a lot of head nodding. For the tree board meeting, we'll mention that we have set April 24th. We are working with Northwoods Park Middle School to do it there. They now have their gym. So they're very happy people there. And this one will recognize 40 years of service. And as we've had a commentary before, we're going to look at doing some things at other schools and other places during this time. We'd like to go all around the city. So we're working with, we don't want to burden Michael LaCory and his people too much, but we're going to try to do something so it's at least one a week leading up to this April 24th event. We intend to put a plaque in stone at Northwoods Park to commemorate that the first Bradford pear tree that was part of the Beirut Memorial tribute was planted at that school. And so it's there, and of course we're just so happy that those young people have decided to come back and be a part of it. On October 14th, they'll be making ribbons again to put out at the Grove and to go forward. We hope each member of the committee also puts a yellow ribbon up at your home to welcome in the service members and the families and the people who will be here for the Beirut event, and also to keep it up until Veterans Day as it was. I'll just comment briefly that the city tourism is working on a Veterans Day program, a veterans tribute to veterans weekend, forgive me. And we'll have a number of events out at the Commons You know, there's a parade that's out that happens. And after the parade, this year will be a unique year because the Shriners will follow that parade. And so you'll see it'll be a little longer than normal. And then starting at 1 o'clock, there'll be a number of events that'll take place out at the Commons. Recreation is helping us great with that. Zing Zoom Museum is helping out there. And we have several other groups that'll be engaging in that activity as it was. We will also talk to you about that we will be doing something at Sturgeon City Environmental Education Center. They certainly can use some trees down there, and so that's where we'll also plant some stuff down there as it was too. Toward the end, at the last meeting, we talked a bit about the state recycling, and I just want to run through this quickly since we got everybody here and to go from it there. Basically, on this map, it shows where all the recycling centers are in North Carolina. And I think, you know, we're actually pretty fortunate that we actually have a recycling center right here in our county. It's not in Jacksonville. We know it's way out on Ben Williams Road out there, but, you know, it's out there. And one of the issues is that this is the containment areas for their areas of service. And as you'll see, they're basically the one in our area serves Pender all the way up to, you know, Carteret and those other counties that are north of Pamlico and such up there. And of course, the one down in Wilmington has a rather compact area population and other things that's out there. Well, what happened was, they're calling these MRF sheds now, is that everybody had their own rules. And it was very confusing, particularly about what was going on. It was even more confusing when all the news came out about, you know, China's no longer accepting the recycling and everything like that. So the public has just gotten confused. And so there was a lot of, you know, activity saying, is there something the state can do to help us with this issue? And we know people want to recycle. I mean, we get that. You know, you should be proud of your community when the MRF shut down after Dorian because they didn't want to take wet material. You know, the city knew we had the containers, so people put their recycling in containers that are closed up as it was. And they wanted us just to basically take it straight to the landfill. Well, your city didn't do that. Your city asked people to hold it back. We got some complaints from people who said that that's 2 weeks of stuff and they didn't like that. But, you know, the other option was to just throw it away. So our crews worked that next weekend. They worked on Saturdays to pick things up. And, you know, this was done so that you could see that your recycling actually went to the MRF out there as it was. This bad stories about recycling. You know, it's amazing the number of people who think recycling is a money maker and that we're all just hoarding the cash down here at City Hall. You know, I mean, it's amazing to think that as it was.
That is amazing.
But it's not the truth, and that's the deal. You'll recall this was our former poster. Kim Tillman of our media services staff did this, and it's worked extraordinarily well because this was a list that Sunoco gave to us. But while we were doing this, you know, other people were doing other things. And so there was no unified messaging. And so it did have an extraordinary positive effect. The manager of the local Sunoco, actually he is the manager for this Jacksonville one and the Wilmington one, said clearly Jacksonville stream was cleaner. So we accomplished something, and that's a good thing. We moved the meter. But these issues that were out there still made it confusing. And we know how much our population turns over here, so continuous education was getting to be more of a problem as it is there. So we talked about those markets, different markets at the state level that had the different messaging about recycling. And basically the state agreed and they started this Recycle Right campaign. And you're going to start seeing some social and stuff from us and other things out there, but it was a unified message that was out there. And at the end of the day, they tried to go to every MRF, get the list directly, and then merge it into one list. Well, this written list and this kind of stuff like that doesn't work. They knew it had to be graphical, and it has to be a real clear yes. The stuff in blue is yes, the stuff in red is no. Real clear out there. And the messaging had to be very precise. And you'll notice on your last page of the agenda there, that's the document we're having up there. And there was another thing about don't tangle or contaminate. Because tanglers, as you that went out there and looked that out there at the MRF on our trip, they are more menacing than many things that come across there that just would scare many of us to death. But when the wires get into it and those plastic bags that the grocery store gives you, they are horrible out there to that thing. So no jargon, real clear. It's a 10-week campaign, just to be real clear on the matter. A lot of repetition, because we know you need repetition. One thing they teach you in marketing is that you got to say the same thing over and over and over again and keep it going. And as I tell others, they don't fill the churches up on Sunday with different stories. It's the same story every Sunday. So anyway, so we've got in print, we've done this. You're going to see this again in your utility bill. We're going to do it again to get those people that have moved into the community since we had that. It cost us a little more money to do the color, to do it, but we feel that it's worth it on that. And we're going to have a lot of facts and handouts for people to give, and the social media will be starting soon in this matter too. The state is going to help us with some direct mail activities. And so we're going to be sending those out, so you'll get them to your home and such there, and that's going to come directly there as it was. And we are cooperating with the county so that we're all doing similar things at similar times. There is some local customization, because like there's a couple MRFs that don't take any glass at all. So that's what it is. So they weren't able to say this is the same message across, but the images are universal and it goes to that matter. The biggest thing too was also in many communities they were still bagging their recyclables, and that was a real problem. We didn't have that problem with our containers and things like that. So that's it. This is a document we're providing to our elected leaders this month. They've updated it and it's out so they can have question and answers. I'm going to provide it to you folks also. So as you get those questions and answers, you can help have that information as it was. And obviously, some of them want to do a little bit different. For instance, they call them carts in some communities, what's out there, but the dictionary doesn't give a picture that looks like our roll-out residential containers next to the word cart. So we don't want to confuse our residents. But some other get cart smart about what goes in the trash, what goes here. We're going to just use our same words and keep doing that as it was there. So we're going to bring it in. This is the year we print our Jacksonville 101 book. So some of you saw the previous edition that we do of our benefits of living in Jacksonville. So we're going to have these messages in there because we hope we can keep this message for several years to go forward from this matter. And we're hoping that if you folks want to go to a meeting and pass stuff out, we'll have that available for you also too. Some in-person presentations and things such like that as it was. And these are the social media's toolkits, and like I said, you're going to be seeing some of this stuff very soon as it was. And lots of posters. We're going to have it so you can download it and print it out if you want to or whatever. Here are the participating groups across the state, and it is really an impressive group. But there's some bands in there, particularly kind of east of I-95. There's some areas that aren't participating. So just to go over the list real fast, don't tangle or contaminate. Plastic, we take it. We're not going by number. It's got to have the symbol on it. No pumps. You got to empty and rinse it. Don't contaminate it. Metal, doesn't matter. If it's metal, we take it. Cans, please rinse, empty and rinse. Bottles, we take all the bottles, empty and rinse. And paper, carton, it's got to be dry. And we're asking you to flatten the cardboard. This doesn't say dry, but they're adding that in there, but it's got to be dry. Wet cardboard.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a mess. And here's all the no's. Lots of no's out there. Now, you'll notice that we, in the plastic, we didn't say about, numbers 1, X, Y, people, that didn't resonate very well. No styrofoam. That's what this is. Basically, they can't take styrofoam, which styrofoam is a registered trademark of DuPont, and it cannot be recycled. So, no. And those peanuts and stuff like that, no. So they're in there as it was too. And obviously, don't bag, so we got out there. So, that's our situation there as what's going. And Madam Chairman, I'm just going to continue on there if you don't mind. I'll do the one city moment on the Census Day. We thought we should talk about, since it's been a while since we had met, the National Night Out we thought was an appropriate thing to talk to you folks about. It's the way our community gets out and gets together and shares information. You see there's the stormwater presentation that they do, it was great music and it was a warm night, but it was not as warm as some nights that we've been down there wetting ourselves in that place. And then 9/11. This community last year with Florence approaching still did 9/11 on the eve of the mandatory evacuation. And we had a nice crowd this year. It was a little smaller, but it was a nice crowd. And we remember all those people. And of course, it's very moving to us to see where the military does the MIA, KIA memorial there, and it's striking. This year, normally we have students from Camp Johnson do it. This year it was actually the instructors from Camp Johnson that did that. And our our fire chaplain closes this out, and he always gets teary-eyed. The gentleman on your left there is Officer Ubina. He's a Camp Lejeune police officer. He was on duty in New York City as a New York City police officer on the day of 9/11. And he held the picture of somebody he knew several years ago because he wanted to do that part. And this year we recall the story about John Shapira, who was a Marine, was in Beirut at the time of the bombing and survived that bombing. And then he later became a New York City police officer. Then he became, his brother was a New York City firefighter, as his father was. And so he decided to become a firefighter. And on 9/11, he rushed into the second of the Twin Towers and he perished with 343 of his colleagues who were also first responders. And so the symbolism that we have in Jacksonville with the beam so close to the Beirut Memorial, he's kind of spans that distance right there between those two places. And this is the other one. This is the Hero Mile that we do for the Marine Corps Half Marathon. The city staff sets this up. It's part of what we do. We get nominations for people to be on it who have passed in the War on Terror. And there's no shortage of names for us to have. Now this weekend we'll be putting it up for the Remembrance Run that goes through the Lejeune Memorial Garden. And we're putting up every poster. So that it's going to be nearly 200 that'll be out there. And this is always emotional. You see people just really, they react to this, and it's a real sobering part. Some people say this is the hardest mile of the Marine Corps Half Marathon out there as it is. And this is personal story. This is a woman who was running for her son and the brother of her daughter to her left. And but she wanted to do something in honor of him, and she did it. And this was on her bucket list to do the Marine Corps Half Marathon. And she did it. That is what we had there.
It's impressive.
Absolutely. I do want to repeat, some of you didn't get, Dr. Woodward was here at the last meeting that we couldn't have a quorum for. Again, automatic removal has been removed, and it's the terms now, you'll be reappointed for 2 years, and the council will be given your attendance record, and then they will make a decision from that if you so desire to be reappointed. So that's it. And in the census update, just real fast, we were actually out there also at National Night Out pushing that message that we lost $402 million because not everybody here in our community was counted. And we want you to help us count them as it was during that time. Every person in the United States is to be counted, and it's everyone. This has nothing to do with politics. It's a census, just like Jesus' parents had to go to Bethlehem to get counted. It's the same thing. It's required by the Constitution, but y'all know when they distribute funds based on this whole matter, and because of that, we lost money because we didn't have 22,000 people that were not counted in Onslow County in the last matter. And that $402 million could have done a lot of things in Onslow County as it was. We also, the state lost another congressional seat because the ones that were not counted here and in some other parts of the state would have given us the edge over South Carolina. They got the extra seat, we did not. And Jacksonville went from number 10 in the state in population to 14th. So we lost that ranking, and said our realtor friend over there knows rankings mean something when people are looking at things as it was. The new rule about about travelers and deployments is, where do you intend to sleep? Where is it that you intend to return to if you're away from your home on census day? And so that representation, the maps are drawn. Dr. Washington's a member of a ward. Those wards have to be redrawn after every census, and so we have to have good and accurate data in order to do that as it was. Businesses use it to decide where to locate things, and governments where to put things. And real estate use it for data as research. And on the March 12th of 2020, you'll get a card in the mail. That's when they're going to start mailing them out. And you'll get it there, and you can just go and do it online, return it online. You can do it on the phone, or if you want to have paper, you can ask for paper and get it there. If you don't fill it out, somebody's going to come to your home. It is secure. I mean, I know a lot of people don't trust the government, but they do a lot of things here to make sure it's secure. They have to hold it confidential for 72 years, and they can't share it with other people. And when they do open it up 72 years later, it's mostly people who are doing genealogy who want that type of reports and things there. It's accurate. And of course, it's our civic duty to do it. So hopefully we can do something on that matter. And with that, Madam Chairman, I have no more reports for you.
So what are we doing different? So you're doing a lot of different things that we didn't do before in order to
Yes,
increase
we are.
it?
Yes, we are. We are, in 2 weeks, we're going to have a faith community group. Dr. Amy Ciceron's leading that. And we're going to get together with them to discuss it. We're doing the business community separately. We have a group that's working for the schools about what information to pass out to the schools and when to do it and how all that activity as it was there. We'll have a team that will go to civic clubs and churches and wherever you want them to go and talk. They'll have things to go do that on the matter. And we're going to really have a significant publicity campaign that'll begin in late January after the Super Bowl.
It'll pay back.
Oh, yeah.
Do all of it,
Oh,
the
yeah.
hard work.
Yeah, we asked the city and the county both to set aside some funds so we could have that to work with. There was no hesitancy.
If we're gonna try to touch all the churches,
That's what I'm.
Yeah, the
Right.
faith communities, we're meeting with them shortly.
wonderful.
Anyone else have anything? If not, our next meeting is scheduled for December 5th at 6 p.m. With no further business, adjourn the meeting.
Adjourn.